On a warm summer night in June 1951, New York City was alive with its usual chaos. Cars honked, neon signs glowed, and people hurried across the streets. But suddenly, everything stopped. Witnesses stared in shock as a young man, dressed in old-fashioned clothes from another century, appeared out of thin air. The man looked confused, terrified. His sideburns, his hairstyle, his shoes, even the fabric of his coat seemed to belong to the 1800s. He spun around, eyes wide, as if the world he had known no longer existed. Then panic consumed him. Without warning, he bolted into the street. Screeching tires, a loud crash, and just like that, the mysterious man lay dead under the wheels of a car. At the morgue, investigators searched his pockets. What they found was more terrifying than his sudden death. Among his belongings were a copper beer token worth 5 cents from a saloon no one had ever heard of, a bill for horse care and carriage washing from a business long vanished, about $70 in old-style banknotes, business cards reading RudolphFentz, 5th Avenue, and a letter dated June 1876. Even more disturbing, none of these items showed any signs of age. The letter was crisp, the ink fresh, as if they had been made just yesterday. NYPD Captain Hubert V. Rim took the case. Who was this strange man? He visited the 5th Avenue address from the business card. Dead end. No one there had ever heard of a Rudolph Fentz. No fingerprints matched, no missing persons report filed. It was as if the man had never existed. But then a breakthrough. Rim discovered the name Rudolph Fentz Jr. in an old 1939 phone directory. Following the trail, he learned that Fentz Jr. had died in 1946, but his widow was still alive. When questioned about her husband's father, she revealed a chilling truth. In 1876, at age 29, Rudolph Fentz Sr. had gone out for an evening stroll and never returned. So what really happened? Did Rudolph Fentz vanish in 1876, only to reappear in 1951, 75 years later, stepping straight into his death? Some say it was all fiction, a short story by the writer Jack Finney disguised as truth. Others whisper it was a cover-up, hiding real evidence of time travel. Even today, no one knows for sure. Was Rudolph Fentz a man lost in time, or just a legend? Imagine this. A man dressed like he belongs in 1876, carrying money and papers from that very year, yet lying dead in 1951 New York. A man who, according to every record, should not exist. Witnesses swore he did not walk onto the street, he appeared. One second there was nothing, the next a living, breathing man. Some theorists suggest Rudolph Fentz slipped through a crack in time, a doorway between centuries. One moment he was strolling down a gaslit street in 1876, the next he was standing in the blinding headlights of a 1951 automobile. But time is not merciful. It tore him away from his world, only to throw him into ours, to die in terror and confusion. When investigators realized what they had, the case became dangerous. A man from the past dying in the present, undeniable proof of time travel. If the public knew, it would shake the world. So, was the story buried on purpose? Later, researchers claimed it was just a short story by Jack Finney. Convenient, isn't it? A neat explanation to erase the horror of what really happened. When investigators realized what they had, the case became dangerous. A man from the past dying in the present, undeniable proof of time travel. If the public knew, it would shake the world. So, was the story buried on purpose? Later, researchers claimed it was just a short story by Jack Finney. Convenient, isn't it? A neat explanation to erase the horror of what really happened. Still, whispers remain. People claim to have found records of the real Rudolph Fentz, evidence that he lived and truly vanished in 1876. But those who speak too loudly are silenced. Modern science admits that time travel is not just fantasy. Particles move backward and forward in time every second. And humans? If we travel fast enough, faster than anyone else, we too can leap into the future. But Fentz had no machines, no rockets, no technology. He had only his evening stroll, and whatever nightmare swallowed him whole. Captain Hubert V. Rimm could not sleep that night. The face of the dead man, his terrified eyes, and the strange items found in his pockets kept haunting him. Everything about the man screamed of the past, yet he had died in the middle of modern New York City. The captain decided to dig deeper. He went to the library and searched through old phone directories, census records, and missing persons files. Days turned into weeks, but no answer appeared. It was as if Rudolph Fentz had been pulled straight out of another time. Finally, one clue emerged. In an old directory, Rimm found the name Rudolph Fentz Jr. The address led him to a nursing home where an elderly woman lived. She was the widow of Rudolph Fentz Jr. When Rimm mentioned the name Rudolph Fentz, the old woman froze. Her hands trembled and her eyes filled with fear. She whispered, "Yes, I knew him. He was my husband's father, but he vanished long ago. One evening in 1876, he went out for a walk in Central Park and never returned." Rimm's blood ran cold. The description matched exactly. A man who disappeared in 1876 had reappeared 75 years later, only to die on a New York street. But the horror deepened when Rimm examined the objects again. The coins from the 1800s had no signs of wear, as if they had been freshly minted. The letter dated 1876 looked brand new, with ink that hadn't faded a bit. The calling card was crisp, the handwriting sharp, untouched by time. It was as if the items had traveled through a portal, untouched for decades, and landed directly into the future. Some whispered that Fentz had walked into a rift in time, a crack between centuries. Others said he had been snatched by some supernatural force and dropped into a world he could not understand. Witnesses swore they saw him appear out of thin air, terrified, confused, as if he had just stepped out of another century. The thought was terrifying. If it happened once, could it happen again? Could people suddenly vanish from our world and reappear in another time without warning? Captain Rimm felt a chill run down his spine. For the first time, he wondered, was Rudolph Fentz truly the only one? Or were there others, lost in time, wandering through centuries, waiting for their tragic fate? The case was eventually closed as unsolved, but to this day, many believe Rudolph Fentz was not a man of 1951. He was a man of 1876 who fell into the wrong century. And maybe, just maybe, the same thing could happen to anyone, even today. The case of Rudolph Fentz was officially closed, but Captain Rimm could never erase it from his mind. Late at night, when the city was asleep, he often sat by his desk, staring at the strange objects kept locked in evidence. The coins still shone as if brand new. The letters still smelled of fresh ink. The visiting cards still looked untouched by time. They defied all logic, all science. One night, unable to resist, Rimm opened the evidence box. As he held the letter in his hand, the lights in his office flickered. A cold wind blew through the closed window, carrying a faint echo, like footsteps from another century. And then he swore he heard a voice whisper behind him, "Where am I? What year is this?" His heart froze. He turned, but the room was empty. Only the faint smell of old leather boots lingered in the air. Rem never spoke of that night to anyone, but in his private journal, one chilling line was found after his death. Rudolph Fentz was not alone. So, what really happened that night in 1951? Was Rudolph Fentz a confused traveler lost in time? Or was he just the first one we caught, while countless others slipped through the cracks of history, wandering centuries unseen? Perhaps even now, as you walk the streets at night, someone may suddenly appear beside you, dressed from another century, terrified, lost, and looking for answers. The question is, if time can swallow a man and spit him out 75 years later, who will be next?